the Avro Vulcan was the last of the RAF's V bombers. The era of the strategic bomber had passed and it was replaced by smaller, faster aircraft, like the Tornado that I flew during the Gulf War. But for many people, the Vulcan was the real star of the air shows. And in September 1992, Vulcan XH558, the last flying example, gave its farewell display at Cranfield in Bedfordshire. For many, it was a day never to be forgotten. This film was shot during the Vulcan's flight to that display. The Vulcan had first flown in 1952 and was conceived as a high-altitude strategic bomber able to carry nuclear weapons. Its most striking feature were the enormous delta wings. Initially, these had straight leading edges, but buffeting encountered whilst pulling G meant that there was an excessive fatigue on the wings, threatening the operational life of the aircraft. The solution was the addition of kinks to the outer edges of the wings. And in order to carry Britain's standoff nuclear missile, Blue Steel, the Vulcan was increased in size. This new version, the B.2, of which X-Ray Hotel 558 was the first, was delivered to the RAF in 1960. However, the transfer of Britain's nuclear deterrent to the Royal Navy in 1969, coupled with the fact that ground-to-air defences had become more effective against high-altitude bombers, meant that the Vulcan operations were changed to a low-altitude strike role. Ironically, the Vulcan's only taste of combat was during the Falklands conflict in 1982, when several missions were launched to bomb the airfield at Port Stanley, the capital. The bombing was carried out dropping old-fashioned 1,000-pound iron bombs from mid-altitude, something the RAF had not done since the Second World War. These Black Buck missions were also, up to that point, the longest in history. But they were a success, as the Argentinian Air Force was denied use of the only runway on the Falklands, as well as being forced to keep squadrons back for defence of the mainland, just in case. In 1985, the Vulcan's operational career ended. But this aircraft, XH558, remained in a display role until 1992, when sadly that also came to an end. In 1993, she was purchased from the Ministry of Defence and moved to Bruntingthorpe Airfield, where she's remained ever since. With me now is David Walton, whose company bought the Vulcan. David, why did you want the old girl?
Strange set of circumstances, really. We were invited by the RAF to view the aircraft when she was up for disposal, and subsequently we put in a bid and were successful.
And what's it taken to keep it in this good condition over the last few years?
It's taken a lot of effort, both by our volunteer members who look after all the aircraft in the museum and by our engineers who work full-time on this aircraft. It's taken a lot of fuel and a lot of expense.
And, of course, you're hoping to fly her again. What's it actually taken to get the green light for that project?
It's taken really 4 years of serious work in progressing the project plan to the point where we have now got support in principle from British Aerospace and the Civil Aviation Authority to progress the project. So we're optimistic now that, subject to getting sufficient funds, we can make this aircraft fly again.
And how much effort is it going to take to actually do that?
The major that's required, which is a major service, the aircraft will have to be stripped out to basically a bare carcass, the engines removed, undercarriages removed, all the components that will be going away for bay servicing, bay overhaul. It's estimated at 20,000 man-hours.
And when do you think we might see her back in the skies again?
We're aiming at the autumn of year 2000 as for the flight test programme, and hopefully she'll be flying then in the display circuit in the year 2001.